Okay, we should be live. So I am Jacob Del Rio in Adult Services at Edwardsville Public Library. I'm joined by Terry from the Mississippi Valley Library District in Collinsville, Illinois. Um, I gotta say, your Facebook feed through all of COVID and all of lockdown was one of my favorite feeds to keep up with, especially around Halloween time. So your scary stories and the movie recommendations you had for movies on Kanopy as far as your top 10 horror, all that was awesome. And I kind of wanted to celebrate halfway to Halloween. So we're right in that time where we are less than 6 months out from starting October 1st, which is when you probably should start celebrating Halloween, if not earlier. But I think the beginning of May is actually proper halfway to October 31st. So anyway, Terry, I asked you here to celebrate halfway to Halloween with me, and we go over some of our own favorite horror movies to watch on Kanopy right now. So,
well, thank you so much for having me, Jacob. And you guys do great work there too. I'm excited to do this. It's very fun.
Yeah, you know what I should do? I swear every time I look like I've never done this before, but I'm gonna monitor our chat here in case this is going live on Edwardsville Public Library's Facebook feed right now. Just gotta turn the volume down so you don't hear feedback. Anyway, Kanopy. What is Kanopy, and what is it good for? So I can tell you, for us and for Mississippi Valley patrons, you can download or stream 5 movies a month, and it turns over like the calendar month. So if you watch a bunch of movies at the very end of April, you can watch 5 more on May 1st. It just resets at the beginning of the month, and then none of those points roll over. So it's 5 each month. And you can watch it on your phone, on a computer. There are Kanopy smart TV apps. I watch stuff on the Apple TV. But on your website, how do your patrons get there?
So if you go to our website, it's MVLD.org. In the menu, you'll see our ebooks and more section, and under there, you'll find Kanopy.
Great. And our website, it's edwardsvillelibrary.org. We have a ribbon down the middle that's called ebooks, and it says ebooks and more. Click that, and then you'll see an icon for Kanopy. You'll need an active library card with either of our libraries. Make sure your stuff isn't expired, or if you have any overdue fees. For us, it's greater than $5. You'll be restricted from viewing anything on there. So, Terry, just for my own curiosity and for everyone watching, before we start digging into what's on Kanopy, can you tell me maybe your desert island top 5, or just some of your favorite like horror movies or Halloween mood movies that get you excited for in a festive Halloween spirit?
Yeah, I mean, I love all types of horror, but I do really lean kind of 2 specific directions. I like a lot of classic horror, and all the way back to Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi and Vincent Price. All that kind of stuff is usually my favorite. And then I also really, really like the kind of modern trend of what they call prestige horror, especially of the supernatural variety. So that's movies like It Follows or The Babadook or other classics from recent years in that kind of vein.
Yeah, those are all good ones. Universal monster movies definitely are also a blind spot for me. I've watched kind of the first entries of each of those monsters. So I've watched Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. But yeah, I for some reason that's a big blind spot for me as well. As I don't think I've ever seen The Invisible Man nor the new remake. Yeah, probably should the less information I share, the better as far as my horror cred on this video. Because if I start listing off the things I haven't watched, it's gonna just kind of out me as just a very fair weather, basic movie fan.
No, that just means that you have a lot of fun ahead of you. You have so much good stuff to check out.
Yeah, no, you have no idea how many things I have. I have a Letterboxd account. It's kind of like Goodreads for movies, and I have so many things on there that I need to watch. So I'll just say for myself, like I think as far as horror, I'm either really into the fun of like Tom Savini style gore and like the early slashers and the first four Friday the 13th movies. Like for other monsters, like I like the first Halloween movie. I like other stuff by John Carpenter, but I don't really care for the bulk of the Halloween series. Um, as far as classics goes, I'm kind of more in the like 50s, 60s, like The Haunting, some of those really paranormal slash psychological horror. For more current stuff, I really like something like The Others, things that are a little more just, yeah, basically paranormal slash psychological horror. The horror that's like the less you see, this is the scarier, I guess. Um, and yeah, sometimes I have fun with found footage horror, kind of, but I don't dig into a lot of that stuff. Um, yeah. Anyway, I'm just trying to think of other favorites. For Halloween stuff, I specifically like to watch every single year Trick or Treat, with Sam as our character. I think is it Michael McDonough? Is that the name of the director of that one? Anyway, it's from about 2008ish. There's another movie called Trick or Treat. It's not that one. Anyway,
Director of Krampus.
it is. Yeah, he also made that Godzilla King of Monsters or whatever the second most recent Godzilla movie was.
Yep.
Anyway, I just now got a notification that we're live on Facebook. So I guess this whole time we've been catching up. I don't know. Anyway, Facebook now sees us. So now's a great time to actually get into our top five. Hopefully the archive will show our little preface that we've given. So Kanopy, if you haven't figured out what it is, go to our websites, edwardsvillelibrary.org or
MVLD.org.
MVLD.org. Hopefully you can go back and catch up. So how about I start with my number 5? This is a surprise for both of us. Terry and I didn't go over our lists for top 5 movies on Kanopy, horror movies to watch for halfway to Halloween. Number 5 for me is What We Do in the Shadows. I know you mentioned that on one of your streams, but for me, Taika Waititi is an international treasure. There's other movies by him in this service, but specifically for horror, we've got a mockumentary that takes kind of a survey of all of the vampire, the different eras of vampires and the different like styles. You've got the Nosferatu style vampire and kind of the modern, not quite Twilight era, but yeah, basically, if you're into mockumentaries, so that would include something like This Is Spinal Tap, or I feel like a lot of the stuff that Christopher Guest makes is also very funny in mockumentaries. It's in that vein. I haven't seen any of the TV show that they've made. I guess on Fox or FX. I've heard that's funny, but this one stands on its own. Very fun. Definitely puts you in the mood for Halloween, but it's also not that scary to where if you normally aren't into horror, this still might be something that I think would appeal to you.
Yeah, I would agree. I love that movie. It's hilarious. I always compare it to people for The Office. If you like that kind of TV show, a mockumentary. But it still has a lot of good, like you said, horror credential. It really kind of knows its history of vampires, and there's a lot of kind of inside references and stuff if you're familiar with the genre. So it does both things really well.
Yeah. So what's your number 5?
My number 5 is The Devil Bat, which is a movie from the 40s starring Bela Lugosi of Dracula fame. And I really like this movie because it's later in Lugosi's career, but he's still kind of in his prime. Later on in his career in the 50s and 60s, he did a lot of like real B movies with Ed Wood and stuff that are fun to watch, but they vary in quality. The Devil Bat may not be like a great movie, but it's pretty solid as far as Bela Lugosi movies go. And it is about a giant bat, a giant devil bat that he has like kind of created. He's a mad scientist in it, basically, which is another side of Lugosi that we see a lot. So it's kind of combining, with the bat, the vampire lore, and then the mad scientist Lugosi. You kind of get a nice overview of everything that makes his movies so much fun. And he's sicking the devil bat on his victims, and so there are great scenes of this now very, very fake looking, giant bat flying down through the trees and landing on people. It's a lot of fun. It has a great classic Halloween kind of feel, like you say. It's not too scary or anything, obviously. It just gets you in that kind of Halloween mood.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I don't think I've heard of that, so I have to go on Canopy and check that out. I just noticed that Canopy actually has a playlist halfway to Halloween when you're browsing on both the computer and on streaming services.
Wow.
So you
Well,
can just go right in theme with us. So moving along to number 4 on my list, Green Room. This is a more, I think some of my stuff skews very recent. So What We Do in the Shadows was 2014, Green Room is 2015. And this is a very just, I don't know if there's a name of the subgenre other than like real horror. So there's no real supernatural elements to this. There's no real, nothing paranormal. It's just the depths of human nature and how dark human nature, human behavior can be, and how desperate people can, how different our behavior can be when we're desperate to survive, and how I guess depraved some people can be. So anyway, what this is a punk band who is just trying to get gigs on their little tour. It's a kind of punk band that tours out of their own broken down van that just needs another place to either to pay or to stay or to get a meal before the next stop on their tour. So they get this one gig, and it just so happens to be at a neo-Nazi compound. And then the band themselves are witnesses to this crime, and the neo-Nazi group, led by a menacing, incredible Patrick Stewart, they do everything they can to keep these witnesses from getting out of their compound. And then what ensues is some of my aforementioned Tom Savini style gore, and just lots of, what I should say is one thing that horror does for me, as long as it does it right, is it doesn't have to be that great of a narrative or have that great of acting or any kind of special effects, as long as whoever does the directing and editing can just really like deftly manage the tension, like really kind of keep you on the edge of your seat, and I don't know, just pay it off. It doesn't even have to pay it off, but if I can sit there and my heart is pounding and my skin is tingling, my hairs are standing on end, then I think it's the right horror movie for me. Anyway, Green Room does that. Green Room is definitely intense. So that's my number 4.
I haven't seen it. I'm not really, I've just started hearing about it recently, I feel like, and I knew that Patrick Stewart was in it and stuff, but I'm not really familiar with it.
Yeah, also Anton Yelchin, who, rest in peace, was in the Star Trek remake movies and some other stuff more recently. But yeah, he was in Green Room as well.
Cool. All right, well, my number 4 is a movie called Carnival of Souls. It's another older one. It's from '63, I believe. And what's interesting about it is that at the time, it was kind of an independent production. It was made by this studio, I guess you would call it, based out of Kansas, who was mainly doing educational videos and commercials and things like that. And the head guys there, I forget their names off the top of my head, but they just like had this vision to make this movie and kind of just used that studio to make it on their own. And it's a really interesting movie. It's, for the time, it's very abstract and psychological. It's a weird kind of supernatural horror where you don't entirely know what's going on. There are some real famous images from it that I had always seen of like the rotunda, the merry-go-round scene, where there's all these kind of ghouls in just kind of stark white makeup converging, and there's some kind of camera tricks. And I had always heard of it, but I hadn't seen it until recently, and it really holds up. It's a good, just weird, creepy thing. The fact that they tried everything that they did in it, especially at the time, just kind of makes it feel different than most other horror movies.
Yeah, I think if I can remember, that was in the mid 2000s era DVD. It was a release from Criterion, wasn't it? The Carnival of Souls. Is that the way it's listed on Canopy? Because I should say Canopy, there's a couple distributors / labels that they have on here. Criterion Collection which is a great curator for classic films. A lot of their stuff's on here, so that might be one of these on Kanopy.
I don't know that it is actually, because I know that Kanopy does have a lot of Criterion films, which is cool. But I've always just found this in the horror section. It might be in the Criterion release too.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I would guess that the Carnival of Souls license through Criterion has expired, because I haven't seen anything newer than that DVD from them, which that would have been like 2004-ish or whenever that came out, maybe even before that. So yeah, Carnival of Souls, that was your number 4. On to my number 3, Day of the Dead, by George Romero, 1985. So, I mean, Night of the Living Dead is a classic for a lot of people, and it's on here. But I think for me, when it comes to just Jacob's top 5, having fun, getting ready for Halloween, for me, when it comes to Bub himself is, I think, the singular most memorable individual undead being in the history of, like, for me, media, film or TV or whatever. And just the tension of being basically in a bunker the entire movie. And I mean, the best stories from any zombie narrative are the stories of the survivors. And in this case, we have basically the scientists versus the military all in this very small bunker. And it's just lots of tension, lots of those fun Savini style gore effects. So yeah, for me, go in for the Tom Savini effects, stay for Bub. The most, I don't know, I don't even know what to say. Do you know what I'm talking about? He's the cover model of the movie poster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The zombie that learns, right?
Yeah, he's basically our domesticated, like, apt pupil zombie. So that's my number 3, Day of the Dead.
Hey, before I continue, the furnace just kicked on here. I hope it's not coming through too much.
I don't hear it. So
Okay.
let's carry on. There's noise going on here too. We're in the middle of a remodel, so let's just keep going. I'll let you know if I hear any crazy.
Okay. Well, yeah, I wanted to say, you know, Day of the Dead is a good suggestion. If you somehow haven't seen Night of the Living Dead, you know, you should stop watching this and like watch Night of the Living Dead, because I don't know how that would be possible. But what's cool about having Day of the Dead on Kanopy is it's not as readily available as Night of the Living Dead. You know, you can almost always find that movie. It's on TV all the time. I actually hadn't seen Day of the Dead in quite a few years until I watched it on Kanopy not too long ago. So it's cool that it's on there.
And I think I haven't watched Night of the Living Dead on Kanopy, but I would guess that if they're sourcing it from Criterion Masters, you know, Night of the Living Dead is pretty famously public domain because they messed up the copyright registration for it. But there's a lot of bad versions of Night of the Living Dead as far as like audio visual quality out there that you could stumble upon on YouTube and whatever else. So if you have a spare Kanopy credit, maybe in your 5 credits before the end of the month, yeah, use that on Night of the Living Dead, even if you could get it elsewhere. So I think you'll have better just audiovisual quality coming out of that on Kanopy.
That's true. It's a good tip. All right, so my number 3 then is, well, I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit, and I did prep you for this, but just the films of Dario Argento, Italian director. They have quite a few of them on Kanopy. If you're not familiar with him, I would definitely start with Suspiria. That's the big one. I believe it's from 1977. It kind of defined what the subgenre that we know as giallo horror now, which is an Italian style of horror that was very heavy on violence and effects, but also like very kind of artistically driven with lots of colors and cool camera tricks and stuff like that. And Suspiria is kind of the top of that mountain. But there are more on there, and I just thought I'd mention real fast. There's also Inferno and Phenomena and some other ones on there. They actually have quite a few. It was exciting for me because I had always heard about these movies as a horror fan my whole life, especially as an old horror fan, like I talked about, liking Universal Monsters and Vincent Price. Even, you know, growing up, I heard about Dario Argento movies and how that was kind of the next step. But being a kid in the 90s, you didn't really have access to a lot of these kind of things. It's like if you could find a VHS or whatever. So I had never seen them. I've always heard about them. And when I saw that they were all on Kanopy, that was actually the first time that I binged through all of them and caught up finally. And it was just really cool to find them there.
Yeah, that's great that yeah, Canopy's the place where you could actually catch up with that stuff. And yeah, I saw Suspiria once and I've forgotten it, so I'm ready to jump back in again and then catch up with those other ones. Do you have anything else about Argento? Did you watch the Phenomena? That's one with Jennifer Connelly, right? Does that hold up to the older ones?
Yeah, that one's weird. It also has Donald Pleasance of Halloween fame.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of accessible in that way, but I don't know that I would start there. It is interesting. So the thing to know about Argento is that, or Giallo in general, is that a lot of them kind of started as slashers, basically, almost like mysteries, thrillers, where it was about a crime, and it was a lot of the time kind of finding out, what happened or who did it. There were these famous scenes where the killer would just be shown in black gloves or something, and so you kind of didn't know who it was. But starting with Suspiria and then going into Inferno and Phenomenon and some other ones, Argento did like supernatural Giallo. And it's just a lot of weird stuff. Like Suspiria and Inferno are both about demons and stuff. Phenomena is about bugs. It's about like creepy crawlies. So if that sounds interesting, it's worth checking out, but it's kind of in the deep end. It's kind of like after he had already gone over that hill of Suspiria, and it was in the 80s. So it was him kind of coming down from there, I think.
Yeah, Giallo is definitely a blind spot that I have. I don't know if I said this in this since we went live or before, but anyone that maybe isn't like a hardcore horror fan, Giallo I think can appeal to anyone that's just a general fan of, the 70s auteurs, because when you see just the cinematography and the music of all these movies, it feels like you're watching maybe a Francis Ford Coppola movie, or if we throw back to other Italian movies, people throw around spaghetti western without actually knowing why they call it spaghetti westerns. It's the movies of Sergio Leone, and then you have the Ennio Morricone soundtracks, and those are movies also. There's such a just this big emphasis placed on the just the sweeping grand cinematography, just beautiful vistas, just wide framed, aspect ratio, and then just really just in those westerns you have like more of a western based soundtrack, but I guess in some of the giallo I've seen there's a little more of a synthy, but it's still like there's definitely a focus on this aesthetic that is so appealing, not just a horror fan, but anyone who wants to appreciate film as a medium. It kind of reminds me of some of those more classic 70s stuff.
Yeah, I'd agree. They're very cinematic. And there's actually, real quick, an interesting link between our two picks we just went over, because George Romero of Night of the Living Dead and Day of the Dead fame worked with Argento and other Giallo directors. And you kind of get some of that Giallo aesthetic in his movies, well, especially Dawn of the Dead and stuff, like the way the blood looks. Once you see them side by side, you can really see that look. And I'm going to cheat again. There's another movie on Kanopy called Two Evil Eyes.
Yeah.
It's George Romero and Dario Argento. They're doing Edgar Allan Poe films, or short films. One of them does a story each. So.
Yeah, I have not seen that. I just saw they announced the 4K release of that. I don't remember if that's something that who's putting that out. But anyway, seeing that on Kanopy will give me a better idea whether or not I want to spend money on a 4K disc of Two Evil Eyes. So you number 3 was your Argento picks.
Right.
So number 2 for me, maybe I'll cheat too. What I have on my little notes is Midsummer, but I'll go ahead and throw in Hereditary since I don't have it anywhere else on this list. Same director. Hereditary is a movie where I had like step away from it halfway through. Like I didn't see it in theaters, I saw it at home. I had to pause and just like walk away at one point. It's a movie that makes you just feel, it's so well made, but also it just makes you just feel this real sense of dread. and it's a movie that has a lot of really high highs. But I think for me, a better film as a whole experience, a whole narrative would be Midsummer for me. I'm not sure why exactly that is, um, but for Midsummer, it's basically Florence Pugh. Who, this was my first exposure to her, but she's been in other movies. I think she was in The Little Women that came out a couple of years ago. She's in the new what's the Black Widow. I think she's going to be. I think she's actually going to take over for Scarlett Johansson in the Black Widow series. So it's kind of like a passing the torch, kind of like they've done with the Winter Soldier and I totally forgot Anthony Mackie's character in that series. It sounds pretty bad. Anyway,
Yeah,
Florence Pugh, Midsummer, she basically tags along with someone that's there's this kind of folksy cult in Sweden. So you're going there for their midsummer celebration. And this all kind of ties into kind of Scandinavian folk pagan traditions. But there's also a lot of that real horror akin to what we see in Green Room. And it's just one of those movies that just escalates so much. When we're talking about managing tension, it just escalates to the point where just the last, I don't know, 15 minutes or so is just insanity. And it really is just, even though it's insane, it also makes you do like a little horror chef kiss at the end, like, wow, that was nuts. I can't believe I saw that. And now I have to just share that with other people that also wouldn't believe it if they sat and saw this. So my number 2 is Midsummer, but I'll throw in a little asterisk, and that asterisk below will say also watch Hereditary.
You know what? That was my number 2 as well, and both of them. I might actually go with Hereditary and then Midsummer personally. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about them some more. I thought about changing out if we got a duplicate, but there's so much to say about these movies. I had a similar experience to you where when I watched Hereditary, it bothered me. And horror movies never bother me. I say all the time that I'm desensitized, and like I can't even remember the last time a movie, even kind of scared me, much less like kind of really traumatized me like Hereditary did. It really stuck with me. And there's just something about it. It's hard to explain, especially without going into any spoilers, but it's not even that unusual of a movie in terms of like, plot. If you explain what's happening, it kind of just sounds like an Exorcist or haunted house movie. But there's just something in the way that it's done, which I give credit to the director, Ari Aster, who also did Midsummer, because Midsummer's like that too, where just everything feels uncomfortable all the time. And there's just something in almost every scene, every way something is set up that just makes you feel uneasy, makes you feel like something is not right, even when it's kind of a normal seeming situation. And Midsummer is I would say it's kind of more approachable in some ways, because I think it has some of those like slasher movie vibes that people expect from horror movies, where there's a group of friends and they're going to this dangerous place, and there's some more overt violence and that kind of threat, which would tie into slasher movies. But it's also in some ways unapproachable because it's kind of an epic feel. It's more than 2 hours, I believe. And so with both of these movies, I have found they're very divisive. Like you either seem to love them or hate them more than anything I've ever seen. I've got a lot of that reaction myself, just talking to people about them or recommending them. I've had people come back and tell me, like, yeah, that was unlike anything I've ever seen. It was scary. It was, messed up. And I've had people tell me that they thought it was like stupid and they laughed at it, or I've seen people even get angry about them because they didn't understand it or whatever. So it's just whatever your case is, you're probably going to have some kind of reaction to them.
Yeah, I muted myself. I don't know if you can tell me if you actually end up hearing some of the work that's going on in here. But when I looked up the Ada Stupa, there's a moment where everything just kind of goes totally 90 degrees. You're watching, these old people kind of on a cliff above you, and then craziness ensues. And that's a real tradition. You go to look up what Ada Stupa is, and that's part of the traditions, maybe not 21st century traditions, but it's part of that history. So I would be curious what I haven't talked to anyone who's from Sweden or from, this any Scandinavian countries, what they would think of watching Midsummer, because I don't know that anyone involved with it is, from any of these countries. But it's definitely, um, yeah, it's not quite one of those movies where Jaws keeps you out of the ocean. I still would like to travel to Sweden, but it's one of those things like, man, maybe if you show up to Sweden and you see a bunch of people in like white robes, like go back to the different town you came from.
I
So
do have an interesting anecdote about it too, real fast. I remember hearing that they pitched it to Oster, the director, pretty much as a straight slasher movie, and he was not interested in doing it and turned it down. And then, from what I've read, he went through a breakup or whatever, and then decided to make it what he calls it a breakup movie, which is probably a stretch. Like if you go into this expecting a romance breakup movie, but there are a lot of elements of the human characters and what happens to them and their relationships. So it's interesting to see it framed through that too, and how much that was apparently important to his vision.
yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the way it starts with Florence Pugh's character, and I can't remember her boyfriend, the actor. I can't remember anyone's name. But yeah, they're kind of on the outs, but she's, it starts off with you seeing this family tragedy that she had, where she's really trying to like, you know, get her footing, and maybe this vacation will be the escape she needs to kind of get her groove back or whatever. And man, it couldn't be any this vacation they take couldn't go any more awry. But the other thing is like the when we talked about aesthetics and stuff, but man, Green Room, it's such a dark, just grim, like you watch that movie and like I would not want to be in that room even if no one else was in there and nothing else was going on. You watch Midsummer and it's in Hereditary is also dark for a lot of it. Midsummer is just sunny and it's bright and like lush green trees. So it is disarming. Like it really kind of lulls you into this comfort that it's very happy to sweep out from under you. So yeah, it's beautiful to look at, but yeah, it is long. There's actually, I don't think Kanopy has the director's cut, but there's a cut that's like almost 3 hours long of this. So I don't know. I ate it up. I mean, this is kind of the kind of thing I could watch every couple of years or once a year. Midsummer.
I agree. It's really cool that they're on Canopy because they're so new and they're so important. If you're a horror fan, like you need to see them. Everybody's talking about them, and the fact that they're on Canopy is cool.
Yeah, be a part of the zeitgeist. Be a part of the conversation. Be hip.
That's right.
Yeah. So my number one, I'm really not even that big of a vampire person. Like I don't like have any Twilight books in my house. I don't have any.
Sure.
I never had a goth phase really, but my number one is a vampire movie. My number five was also a vampire movie, even though What We Do in the Shadows is more about just being fun. Number one, Let the Right One In, from 2008. This was a Swedish language film that was remade. I never saw the English language, the American remake. But for Let the Right One In, you have this is another one of those movies where it's going to appeal to horror fans. It's going to appeal to vampire fans, whatever. But it really has a much broader appeal to anyone that wants to enjoy just coming of age, kind of a classic feeling cinema. So Oscar is this 12-year-old kid. He lives in this suburb of Stockholm. He's bullied. He's lonely. He's got a single mom, and she's working kind of weird hours. It's kind of like always suddenly by himself. This new girl, Ellie, moves to his neighborhood. And then, before too long, we find out she's a like Guillermo del Toro strange style vampire, the kind of vampire who like the scarier ones where just their face just opens up when they're ready to eat and feed on people. But it's more than just like that. It just really deftly balances this character who you should be afraid of, what she's capable of, this vampire that has been around for 200 years, but also the kind of friendship that she finds in this Oscar or that he finds in her. And then, so I think you should also watch this movie, spend your Canopy credit, just if you want to be the most satisfied you could ever be from a sense of comeuppance. Like I've never felt so triumphant from watching something so bad and awful happen to someone, but you get such a great sense of rewarding slash satisfaction slash payoff by the time you're near the end of this movie. But yeah, for me, Let the Right One In, the original in Swedish is my number one.
Nice pick. I haven't seen that one. I've seen the remake actually. Let Me In, not to confuse it. Let the Right One In is the original, and I haven't seen it. Is it similar? I know you haven't seen the remake, but is it similar in that the boy is being picked on, being bullied, and she kind of the vampire kind of ends up defending him?
Yeah, that's more or less the way it kind of escalates into that. That's like the very end of the movie. But anyway, leading up to that, it's just a lot of just kind of these two kids in quotes, because the vampires, been around for 200 plus years. Getting to know each other and helping that Oscar kid kind of feel comfortable in himself, and also for the Ellie character to kind of remind herself what it's like to be a kid, even though, because she's been stuck in a 12-year-old body for 200 years, but she's still, you meet her previous familiar, who's by now a 75/80-year-old man. And you get the feeling that those two had been together for the last 60 plus years. And so she's kind of like trying to find the next familiar to hang around with for the next 50, 60 years. You kind of get that feeling. So, I haven't seen Let Me In, but I don't know how well it lives up to this one. But for me, I like this one. When I first watched it, I could watch it every. I don't rewatch movies too often, but I could watch this every couple of years.
I need to check that one out myself on there, I guess. All right, so my number one is The Lighthouse by Robert Eggers, and it's from 2019. And I guess this is as good a time as any to say most of these movies are rated R, and this is probably like a hard R. It's a messed up movie. There's a lot of weird stuff in there. It's kind of like, that's what makes it scary, is basically just how out there and weird it is, because it's about two guys in a lighthouse. It's Robert Pattinson of Twilight fame and Willem Dafoe, who is just like perfect. One of the best Willem Dafoe performances ever as this like old salty sea captain. And they're locked up in this lighthouse together, keeping it. And it kind of gets into some Lovecraftian, weird otherworldly horror. It doesn't always explain everything that's happening. You just kind of know that weird things are happening and things aren't right. And it kind of keeps escalating as the characters themselves lose their sanity. And you kind of just lose sight of what is real and what isn't real and what's actually even happening here. And it's just so well done. It's done in this very retro style. I don't have all the specs in front of me, but I know that they shot it, in a certain aspect ratio, with a certain filter, with certain cameras and all of this kind of stuff to perfectly capture the look of a silent film era film. It's all black and white. And it's unlike anything I've ever seen, because it's really just about those two characters in a lighthouse. It's like two characters in one location, but it is so interesting. It flies by because you're just trying to keep up with it and figure out what's going on. And it's just masterfully done. It's another one that's beautiful. The aesthetics, the cinematography and everything. It's really outstanding.
Yeah, I have not seen that yet. It's been on my list. It might be one of those things that I think I might have purchased it when it came out last year on home video, whatever, and I still haven't watched it. That director that he made The Witch, what's his name? Did you say it already? What's his name?
Yeah, it's Robert Eggers.
Robert Eggers, you did say that. Yeah, are those just the only two that he's done? The Witch and this?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just love that. What a start, and like hopefully they have long careers. I know someone like Quentin Tarantino is threatening to be done after just 10 films, but we hope we get a lot of longevity out of directors like these guys, because they're on a good streak. Even it's not on here, but someone like John Krasinski, like I'm ready for Quiet Place 2 and whatever else comes out from him. So do you want to throw out any more honorable mentions or anything? Are you going to cheat some more on your list?
Yeah, I actually resisted cheating there, but we brushed right up against it. And The Witch is on Kanopy as well, the other Robert Eggers movie. It's also fantastic. It's really weird and creepy because it's a period piece. It's like about these pilgrims in the New World, and they get exiled from their community, and they're like out in the New England frontier, by themselves, and it really captures that feeling well. There's a lot of really authentic period details, and it's about this witch in the woods. It's another one that is very adult in a lot of ways, but it's creepy, it's weird, and it's very sophisticated in its way.
Yeah, I like The Witch quite a bit. It's definitely there's a certain mood. It's this dark, old. Um, yeah, I don't even know. It reminds me of like I used to live around in Williamsburg, Virginia. It's got this really kind of creepy reminiscence of like that old America slash people fresh from England. Yeah, that's a whole mood. Yeah, The Witch is good. I had that on my honorable mention list. I also had if you want to have some fun, Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Mhm.
That's just goofy and hilarious and like these poor. Have you seen it?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, just these poor chucklehead yokel like these. It's basically the local hillbillies in the hills versus the the college students that are visiting the hills. But Tucker and Dale, like they kind of accidentally kill all these people. They don't do anything of this stuff on purpose, but it's just fun in the same vein as what we do in the shadows. And then I had you recommended Southbound in your top 10 from last year. I watched that and that was solid, like kind of the anthology in disguise.
Yeah.
I never thought I would. I know I'm big into like camp, summer camp horror movies, like anything like The Burning or Friday the 13th, whatever. I kind of think now I'm into desolate highways, old remote highways as a horror location. So yeah, that's a good one
Stephen
for
King
that.
has a lot for you.
Yeah. Um, any other things you want to mention about Canopy that people should check out?
I'll just say in general that Canopy is really great for horror, and Canopy's cool all around. There's all kinds of other stuff on there. It's not like they just have horror, but I honestly really do think that horror is their strong suit. It's overwhelming almost how many choices they have from so many different eras. It's just a total gold mine, and all the way from real classics like I talked about that you can't hardly find anywhere else, all the way up to modern, big things like Midsummer and The Lighthouse. They just have such a spectrum when it comes to horror specifically that it's a great home for it.
Yeah, in addition to horror, there's documentaries on there that are impressive that they're there. Um, and there is even a some kind of rights that we get not as just as librarians, but also for anyone that uses it. There's you have to see each individual movie, but there's for some of these there's public exhibition licenses that someone could use. Like if a teacher wanted to show one of these documentaries in the classroom, Canopy has some of those licenses built into your usage of it. So that's if you're someone who's mindful of not breaking copyright or doing anything like that, Canopy is great for that as well. So, but right now we should be worrying about Halloween, halfway to Halloween. Hopefully, Halloween's back a little bit stronger than it was last year. I know Edwardsville, we canceled our annual Halloween parade that we have had for years and years. Um, and I don't
Same
know
here.
if there was any trick or treating. I didn't participate in that. I hope to this year. Not like me go out as a 39-year-old man with my bag, but I like giving candy out to trick or treaters. I think we'll have to go king size for all the candy bars this year to
There you
make up
go.
for last year.
Make up for lost time. Yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, Terry, yeah, thanks for coming on here. Appreciate all the content that you guys put out over at Mississippi Valley. I'm looking forward to any Goosebumps story times. Or did you see that R.L. Stein has Garbage Pail Kid books out now?
I did. I saw that he
Yeah.
was dipping into that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tune in if you read that one and link. The Welcome to Smellville, I think is the name of the first one that came out. So, but,
Well, thank you so much, Jacob. This is a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me, and I appreciate your nice words. I love your guys' content too. So thank you so
yeah,
much.
I've been monitoring chat. No one's asking any questions. We have a number of people that are watching, but yeah, if you have any comments or anything, I'll keep an eye on the comments in our feed. I'm sure Terry, when he puts this up elsewhere, we're all um, anxious to engage in any kind of discussion you want to have further on horror movies on or off Canopy. So thanks again. Have a good one. Watch some horror movies.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.